As the United States has sent what the president called a big armada to the region.
Day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes.
3 missiles and 8 drones that were shot down after a U.S. Navy destroyer saw them coming through the Middle East skies.
4:17 local time, Strait of Hormuz. T-minus 6 minutes until impact. 3 Al-Qadr ballistic missiles. More than 2,700 sailors and Marines in the crosshairs. Every second counts. This is the story of 42 minutes that changed everything. Dawn over the strait looks almost deceptive. The water is flat steel. The air is warm, already carrying that Gulf haze that blurs distance and makes everything feel farther away than it is. Tankers move through the shipping lanes with deliberate, heavy calm. Above them, the sky is clean. Below them, one of the most sensitive waterways on Earth is breathing in silence before violence. This narrow passage between Iran and Oman handles roughly 1/5 of global petroleum liquids. 20 million barrels a day pass through here. If this artery closes, markets convulse, insurance spikes, governments panic. And that is why the U.S. Fifth Fleet watches this region so obsessively. About 2.5 million square miles of responsibility, 3 critical choke points, constant pressure, constant shadowboxing, constant risk. And right in the middle of that pressure sits USS Boxer, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, 844 feet long, more than 40,000 tons at full load, a floating airfield and command hub designed to carry Marines, aircraft, landing craft, and enough combat power to turn a calm horizon into an active battle space in minutes. On paper, Boxer is not an Aegis cruiser. It is not built around missile defense in the way a guided missile destroyer is. But it is not helpless either. 2 rolling airframe missile launchers, NATO Sea Sparrow, Phalanx CIWS, electronic warfare, decoys, an air wing on deck, escorts nearby. Networked sensors beyond the horizon. That matters, because in modern combat, survivability is not about one ship. It is about the web around it. Imagine you are on Boxer's bridge at that moment. You can smell jet fuel from the flight deck. You can hear ventilation systems, distant boots on steel, the low mechanical hum of a ship that never really sleeps. Sailors are watching contacts, updating tracks, cross-checking commercial traffic, scanning Iranian patrol activity, processing the ordinary friction of an extraordinary place. On the flight deck, F-35Bs sit ready, sharp-angled and silent, while Marines move through morning routines below. Nobody is relaxed, not really, but nobody sees a ballistic attack as the next event in the next 6 minutes. Not yet. Now shift perspective to the Iranian side. Bandar Abbas, coastal batteries, mine-hardened positions, command screens lit in red and green. This fictional scenario begins with a strategic calculation born from pressure. Tehran wants a message without a full-scale war. It wants spectacle. It wants deterrence theater. A performance of defiance aimed not only at Washington, but at domestic audiences, regional rivals, and every camera scanning the Gulf. The idea is brutally simple. Hit a U.S. warship in the world's most watched choke point, survive the first diplomatic shockwave, and prove that American naval presence is vulnerable under Iran's coastline. Not a campaign, not an invasion, a demonstration. The weapon chosen in this fictional scenario is the Al-Qadr family, a medium-range ballistic missile derived from the Shahab line, here adapted for maritime targeting with external cueing, terminal updates, and maneuvering assumptions that Iranian planners believe will complicate U.S. interception. 3 missiles, not 30, 3, because quantity is not the point. Symbolism is. If one warhead gets through, even a near miss, even deck damage, even a burning helicopter, the footage writes itself. Insurance firms react. Tanker captains hesitate. Regional capitals start calling emergency meetings. In Tehran's view, that is strategic leverage purchased in minutes. And that is the first fatal mistake. Iranian planners in this scenario think the strike window is narrow enough, the target complex enough, and the strait crowded enough to create confusion. They believe Boxer is exposed because an amphibious assault ship is a high-value silhouette in constrained waters. Or they believe a short launch-to-impact timeline will compress American decision-making. They believe the ship's escorts will be forced to sort civilian traffic, radar clutter, and ballistic tracks at the same time. They believe the first clear confirmation will come too late. But they overlooked something fundamental. The U.S. presence in this theater is no longer a line of ships. It is an integrated sensor architecture, space-based infrared warning, regional radar coverage, maritime patrol aircraft, unmanned surface vessels, unmanned aerial systems, destroyers tied into cooperative engagement networks, AI-assisted queuing inside command centers, human operators trained to distrust calm. What they think is a surprise launch is actually a signature flare entering a system already staring at the coastline. At 4:17 and 11 seconds, the first booster plume punches upward from Iranian territory, then the second, then the third. 3 rising heat blooms against a coastline that has been watched for months. Space-based sensors detect it almost instantly. A warning flashes into command chains that do not ask whether this is serious. They assume it is. Seconds later, regional radar begins refining the tracks. Trajectory solutions form. Speed estimates update. Impact baskets shift toward the central strait, toward Boxer. Now you are in the Combat Information Center. No windows, only light from consoles. Voices clipped, fast, controlled. This is where calm becomes procedure. One sailor confirms launch detection. Another correlates tracks. Another pushes the warning to the escort screen. Somewhere, a tactical action officer makes the kind of decision that feels instantaneous from the outside and eternal from the inside. The ship goes to full battle stations. Marines below decks hear the tone change. On the bridge, posture hardens. Damage control parties move. Medical teams prep. Aviation crews secure what they can secure in seconds. Could you make sense of that sound if you were there? Not the alarm. The silence right after it. The silence that means everyone understands. The warning ripples outward. A nearby Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, already operating in support of the amphibious group, shifts fully into ballistic missile defense posture. An escort commander sees the geometry, checks the lanes, and understands the equation immediately. This is not a missile raid meant to exhaust inventory. It is a precision showcase attempt. A kill probability matters more than ammunition conservation. The decision is aggressive by design. Minute 1. Tracks stabilize. 3 inbound ballistic threats. Estimated impact window just under 6 minutes. Minute 2. Aegis locks the engagement sequence. The destroyer's vertical launch cells are armed for intercept. Cooperative data from offboard sensors reduces uncertainty. The first pair of interceptors leaves the rail in a violent column of flame, then another pair seconds later. 4 defensive missiles rising to meet 3 offensive ones. The sky above the strait stops being sky. It becomes mathematics, heat, and velocity. From Boxer's deck, sailors can only catch fragments of the picture. A flash off the escort's bow, then another, then contrails clawing upward at impossible angles, heart pounding. This is real. Less time than your commute through a traffic light cycle. Less time than you spend deciding whether to answer a text. In that compressed space, every system is either good enough or it is not. The first Al-Qadr comes down fastest on the cleanest track, a textbook target until it isn't. The re-entry vehicle begins limited maneuvering, trying to complicate the intercept solution. It doesn't matter. High above the strait, the first interceptor corrects, closes, and detonates in a surgical burst of force. There is no movie fireball, no giant orange bloom, just a hard white flash at altitude, and then a spreading cloud of fragments, each one bleeding speed into the upper atmosphere. First threat eliminated, but the second missile is trickier, whether through better guidance, better luck, or simply different physics. It survives the first engagement attempt. One interceptor misses by a margin that would look microscopic to anyone on Earth and fatal to the ship below. The re-entry body keeps coming. The third missile, meanwhile, has split slightly off the others, forcing the defending network to prioritize, recalculate, and commit. This is the moment Iranian planners were betting on. Confusion. Saturation by timing, not quantity. They thought 3 was enough to make the network blink. It does not blink. Minute 3. Additional interceptors fire. The destroyer's combat system hands one track to a terminal layer solution. Another ship in the screen contributes its radar picture. The network is not arguing anymore. It is hunting. One of the remaining Al-Qadr vehicles is hit in the upper atmosphere. Not completely vaporized, but broken badly enough that what survives is no longer a guided strike package. It becomes debris and heat, still dangerous, but no longer purposeful. Second threat effectively killed. That leaves 1. And now, the geometry becomes brutal. The final missile is descending toward the defended ship group. Terminal seconds. Supersonic closing speed. No room for speeches. No room for doctrine seminars. Just action. Another interceptor rises, faster, flatter, built for endgame violence. It meets the target in a burst so bright that some sailors on exposed stations instinctively flinch, even though the impact is miles away. For a fraction of a second, everyone waits. Did it fully break apart? Did anything survive? Did a warhead separate clean? And here is what makes naval combat so terrifying. Even a successful intercept can still rain danger. Fragments continue downward, hot metal, composite shards, pieces large enough to wound, small enough to evade the eye. Boxer begins a hard turn. Electronic warfare systems are active. Decoys stand ready. Sea Sparrow and Ram crews are locked in. Phalanx mounts track at the edge of last-ditch logic, prepared to shred anything that keeps shape long enough to matter. Then the debris field arrives over water near the ship, splashing down in violent clusters off the port side. One fragment slams into the sea close enough to throw spray over the deck. Another smaller piece strikes outer structure aft, causing superficial damage and a brief shower of sparks. Sailors are knocked down. A helicopter parked on deck is peppered by metallic fragments. But the warship lives. 3 launched, 3 stopped from achieving strategic effect. And now the entire region understands something at once. Iran has crossed the line from harassment to direct ballistic attack on a U.S. warship. The question is no longer whether America will respond. The question is how large, how fast, and how controlled that response will be. Minute 5 after intercept. Secure lines light up from theater command to national command authority. There is no fog about attribution in this fictional scenario. The launch signatures, radar tracks, and origin points are too clear. This is not deniable. It is not a proxy shell game. It is a direct act. U.S. commanders recommend immediate self-defense strike authority against the launch chain. Transporter erector launchers, coastal targeting radars, relay drones, fire control nodes, and command posts tied to the attack. The goal is not symbolic retaliation. The goal is capability denial. Permanent, visible, unmistakable. Authorization comes fast. And this is where the imbalance becomes devastating. Iran fired 3 missiles for immediate effect. The United States responds with a coordinated kill web across sea, air, electronic, and cyber domains. Boxer launches F-35Bs not as lone avengers, but as stealthy eyes and strike coordinators pushing forward to identify surviving mobile launchers and confirm battle damage. From other regional bases, additional aircraft begin moving. Maritime patrol assets widen the search picture. Electronic attack systems start stripping away the enemy's confidence by blinding, jamming, and confusing the same coastal architecture that fed the launch. Under the waterline, a U.S. submarine already in the broader theater receives tasking. On the surface, escorts reposition from defensive geometry to offensive access. Minute 9. The first American counterpunch arrives. Tomahawk land attack missiles lift from launch cells with the flat, controlled violence only naval power can deliver. They do not chase headlines. They chase coordinates already vetted through multiple sensors. A coastal radar node near the strait goes dark. Then a communications relay site. Then a hardened support facility tied to missile queuing. Iranian operators who expected perhaps one retaliatory strike discover instead a layered dismantling. Not a tantrum, not a warning shot. A demonstration of what happens when an attempted showcase meets a larger showcase. Now put yourself in the enemy command room. Could you make the next call? Stay on the nets and risk immediate targeting? Relocate launchers and expose them to drones? Fire again and invite something even worse? Every option now feels smaller than it did 10 minutes ago. Minute 13. F-35Bs from Boxer, working with offboard sensing and escort support, help identify mobile elements trying to reposition inland from the coast. These are the pieces that matter most. Fixed radars can be rebuilt. Political statements can be rewritten. But transporter erector launchers, missile fuel chains, specialized crews, and command vehicles are harder to replace in a hurry. Precision weapons go after mobility, not prestige. One launcher is destroyed on a roadway while attempting to disperse. Another is caught under camouflage netting near a support compound. Fuel trucks erupt. A command van loses power, but then vanishes under the concussion of a direct hit. Minute 18. A second wave lands deeper into the chain. Storage bunkers associated with the strike package are hit. A drone relay network used for maritime surveillance is severed. Coastal surveillance sites around the Bandar Abbas complex begin dropping off the screen one by one. Not because the United States wants to occupy shoreline terrain, but because it wants the enemy blind, mute, and unable to repeat the performance. Minute 23. Iranian air defenses that might have supported follow-on tracking are being suppressed or forced into silence. Not everywhere. Not a full national campaign. This is narrower than that, sharper than that, disciplined by intent. But for the units directly involved, it feels absolute. If they emit, they are seen. If they move, they are tracked. If they transmit, they are fixed. Information dominance has turned the battle space into a glass room. Meanwhile, back aboard Boxer, the emotional center of the story tightens. Damage control teams inspect every outer compartment touched by fragments. Fire parties confirm there is no major blaze. Medical corpsmen treat injuries from shock, debris, and one broken arm sustained during the hard maneuver. A Marine staring at shrapnel gouges in deck equipment understands how narrow survival can be. A sailor on watch realizes he just lived through an event that, from launch to intercept, lasted less time than a coffee break. That is the human side of high technology. Not clean graphics, not tactical overlays, breathing hard inside a steel hull and wondering how close death actually got. Minute 29. The U.S. Response expands one more ring outward. Intelligence-driven strikes hit the command layer that authorized the launch in this fictional scenario. A regional fire control bunker is disabled. Communications between coastal missile units degrade into partial chaos. Iranian naval small craft disperse from exposed positions, not because they can influence the ballistic fight now, but because they know the American surveillance net is hunting for anyone connected to the chain of fire. The initiative is gone. The coastline that was supposed to project fear is now reacting to it. Minute 34. Commercial traffic in the strait is being redirected, slowed, sorted. Tanker masters hear the warnings. Insurance offices wake up. Commodity traders start recalculating before the sun fully rises in Europe. This is why the original strike was such a profound miscalculation. An attack on a U.S. warship in Hormuz is never only about the ship, it is about the artery, the signal, the expectation of free transit. Iran hoped to weaponize uncertainty. Instead, it triggered a regional security surge and a highly visible degradation of its own local strike architecture. Minute 38. Final cleanup strikes hit the last confirmed mobile launcher tied to the attack package. No dramatic speeches, no triumphant music. Just another pinpoint impact and another disappearing heat source. The enemy's short, carefully staged demonstration has been overwritten by a larger, faster, more disciplined counter-performance. By minute 42, the operation is effectively decided. Here is the tally in this fictional scenario. 3 Al-Qadr missiles launched, 3 neutralized before they could deliver meaningful damage, 1 minor fragment impact on USS Boxer, 7 U.S. personnel injured, none killed. Iranian losses, 3 launchers destroyed, 2 coastal radar sites knocked out, 1 command and control node collapsed, multiple support vehicles eliminated, maritime drone relay coverage degraded, and the local missile chain responsible for the attack rendered combat ineffective. Duration: 42 minutes from first launch to the destruction of the last primary retaliatory target. Less than a single television episode, long enough to shake the global oil market. Short enough that many people in the region would only realize what happened after it was already over. So, what is the lesson? It is not that ships are invulnerable. They are not. And it is not that ballistic missiles are useless. They are not. And it is not that geography no longer matters. In Hormuz, geography matters so much that it can distort strategy itself. The real lesson is that modern naval warfare is no longer a duel between one weapon and one hull. It is a contest between networks, between detection chains and decision speed, between those who think a dramatic first strike can freeze an opponent and those who have built an architecture designed specifically to prevent that freeze. Iran, in this fictional scenario, bet on shock. The United States answered with integration. That is what survival looked like here. Not luck alone, not one miracle interceptor. A layered system of space warning, radar fusion, trained operators, escort firepower, onboard defenses, and immediate command authorization. Technology mattered. Training mattered. But above all, connection mattered. Every sensor, feeding every shooter, every second shaved from uncertainty, every assumption tested under pressure, and maybe that is the most uncomfortable truth of all. Future conflicts may not be decided by who fires first. They may be decided by who sees first, understands first, and closes the loop first. A warship in a narrow strait can still survive a ballistic attack if the network around it is faster than the plan against it. But if that network ever fails, the margin between intact and burning is measured in seconds. How does this change your view of modern warfare? Share your take. Subscribe to join the discussion.